So now I just want to draw attention to see how absolutely sexy the iPhone 5S was in its iOS 7 form. I mean, look at that. That phone just looks absolutely gorgeous. The iPhone 5S throughout the years, I think, got less gorgeous because iOS 7 was such a beautiful operating system for a very beautiful phone. The gold model didn't look as good as the silver and space gray. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter as long as the phone works, but for a collector, I like to have the space gray, and I'm going to get the silver model. The silver models are very expensive and rare because a lot of people were still on that space gray vibe. A lot of people didn't start buying silver iPhones until the iPhone 6 and 7 when more options were available in silver, because I think people in general just like black bezels, and that's why Apple went with black bezels for the iPhone X. But I'm going to show you a little commercial, a little promo for the iPhone 5S and iOS 7 with all of its beautiful, beautiful glory.
It's about bringing order to complexity. iOS 7 is a clear representation of these goals. It has a whole new structure that is coherent and that is applied across the entire system. We've considered the tiniest details, like refining the typography, to much larger ones, like redesigning all the icons. And developing a grid system allowed us to achieve a much more harmonious relationship between individual elements. We've also incorporated a whole new palette of colors. Distinct, functional layers help establish hierarchy and order. And the use of translucency gives you a sense of your context. These planes, combined with new approaches to animation and motion, create a sense of depth and vitality. The iPhone, responding to your movements, drives the parallax to create a whole new experience of depth. In many ways, we've tried to create an interface that is unobtrusive and deferential. One where the design recedes, and in doing so, actually elevates your content. Even the simple act of changing your wallpaper has a very noticeable effect on the way your iPhone looks and feels across the entire system. While iOS 7 is completely new, it was important to us to make it instantly familiar. We wanted to take an experience that people know very well and actually add to it, to make it more useful, to make it more enjoyable.
In addition to the redesigned user interface, iOS 7 comes with some great new features and enhancements. Now, the controls you want to access quickly are all in one convenient place with Control Center. One swipe from any screen opens up a set of useful controls. And Notification Center is now available from the lock screen, with a new at-a-glance view of your day. Multitasking lets you jump from app to app much more intuitively. It actually pays attention to which apps you use most and automatically keeps your content up to date in the background. The new Camera app introduces a new level of ease and versatility. Now you can just swipe between modes, from video to still to square, while using a new palette of filters. Your iPhone knows the time and location for each of your photos. The Photos app uses this information to intelligently organize your pictures by clustering them into moments and collections. AirDrop makes it easy to share with people near you. When you've got something you want to share, AirDrop shows you your contacts close by. Just select who you want to share with, and AirDrop does the rest. And if someone's not in your contacts, they just activate AirDrop and you can send them files too. Safari's redesigned user interface lets you see more of your content, starting with full-screen browsing. The unified search field helps simplify searching, and there's a new view for your bookmarks, and also a new way to see your Safari tabs. Siri is now even more helpful and informative. We've integrated Twitter and Wikipedia, and with new male and female voices, Siri sounds better than ever.
Okay, I found this on Wikipedia.
And Siri can assist you in new ways by doing things like changing the settings on your iOS device.
Okay, Bluetooth is on.
iOS 7 brings with it the most significant changes that we've made to the user interface since the introduction of the very first iOS. To create it, we brought together a broad range of expertise from design to engineering.
So if you're not figured out already, we are talking about the iPhone 5S on iOS 7. Now, this phone I got in the mail for $30. I could not believe I got this phone for $30. A man used it in Russia from October of 2013 to 2017 with iOS 7.1.1, which means if you hold down the power button, you should get this. But on this one with 7.0.4, if you hold down the power button, you get this. And then you just swipe to turn it off. This phone, I could not believe it, as it was the 64GB version of the iPhone 5S, a very rare model. Knew it was unlocked because on the listing, the guy posted one picture like this. And as you can see, there's a little bit of a bar right down there. When an iPhone is locked, that bar is not there. The iOS 7 worked on 4 devices. A 4/4S, the iPhone 5, and the iPhone 5S. Now, the iPhone 5S inherently runs really hot because of that 64-bit processor that was not yet optimized. Now, the iPhone 5S, when it came out, had a 64-bit architecture, 1 GB of RAM, A7, and, of course, the infamous Touch ID. Now, the iPhone 5, when it came out, was a 32-bit A6. The iPhone 4 and 4S were A4 1 gigahertz with 256 megabytes of RAM, 512, and then these are both at a gig, which means that they have other advantages. Now, there were some limitations with the 4 and 4S, and that was because of their hardware. The iPhone 4, first off, was just a great phone for the time. It was used up until about 2012. You got all the features. Then, come 2013, there was some issues with the 4 because of the fact that the iPhone 4 was getting to be old. Now, as you will notice, the screen's tiny, and if you scroll up, there are no settings there. On the iPhone 5S, when you scroll up to get to Control Center, you have AirDrop settings, and later you had handoff settings, and a bunch of other things. Nice! So, what you didn't get on the iPhone 4 or the iPhone 5, no NFC on the iPhone 5. That came on the 5S, and that's why the 5S has iOS 12. You did not get AirDrop on the 4 or 4S. You did not get handoff on the 4 or 4S. You did not get a cellular hotspot on the 4, 4S, and 5. Apple Watch connectivity, you did not get on the 4 and 4S. You did not get CarPlay on the 4 or 4S. And this is the weird thing about the iPhones is that the iPhone 4 and 4S were great phones, but if the 4S and 4 both ended on iOS 7, I feel like it would have been better. But the iPhone 4 going to iOS 9 was kind of stupid. They did it because of the iPads needing support, because people use their iPads for 5 or 6 years, and people still use their iPads iPad 2s and 3s today. They give them to their kids use them. My iPad 2 works just fine on iOS 8. And the iPhone 4S kind of needed that extra bump, as it could run iOS 9, but it didn't run iOS 9, and it ran a dumbed down version of iOS 9 really bad, and that's why iOS 9 2 today is called crap OS 9, because it just ran so bad on all devices. Now, when we went from the 5S to the 6, it was a super cycle year. There were a lot of things that were done between the 5S and the 6, and it was 2 years where a lot of people upgraded their phones. Everyone with an iPhone 3G upgraded because their phone was starting to get slow. It was locked at iOS 4, and the new iOS and the new form factors brought them to the table to upgrade. Everyone in the 3GS, they were in the same boat. Their iPhone was discontinued the year before. It was no longer getting iOS 7, and so many people went and upgraded that grade, and they wanted a piece of that beautiful Retina display. All iPod models were stuck on iOS 6 and the iOS versions before, and app support for those skeuomorphic designs was getting killed off, so those people then upgraded. This was the death of the iPod. With the creation of new iPhones and people just giving their kids their older iPhones, the iPod wasn't really needed anymore. And so a lot of people did not get the iPad 5th generation that was released with the iPhone 5. They just got the 5C and didn't give it a SIM card. Anybody who had a 4, a 4S, or a 5 ended up upgrading to a 6 or a 6S because their phone was starting to get slow, support wasn't all there, the iPhone 4 and 4S were discontinued at 7 and 9. They just wanted something bigger, and Apple provided that. A lot of Androids were going bigger, and a lot of people wanted bigger phones. Touch ID was a huge thing. Just being able to rest your finger and get to the lock screen was super great. These phones, you had to swipe, and because of this, not many iPhones had passcodes. This iPhone right here did not have passcode. This phone, you just unlock to open, because my mom never wanted a passcode on her music phone, because it's just really annoying when you don't have that simple unlocking feature from 5S and beyond. The biggest thing about the iPhone 5S was the 64-bit architecture, and that's what allowed it to run iOS 12 really well. iOS 12 on this device doesn't run bad at all. iOS 12 devices run really bad on the 6 Plus because it's a bigger display, more graphics, power is needed. But we're going to do an iPhone 5 unboxing. This one is an American iPhone 5, and this one is a Chinese iPhone 5. Now, the reason why I say it's Chinese is because if we go to the boxes and look up, this Apple logo is slightly weird, and well, you can already tell that this is some Chinese bullshit, because it is. So my dad's boss got him this phone, and this phone was a box set that I created. So when you got your 5S, you open it up like this, and the phone was presented for you. And there you go, now the 5S's are open. This is an iOS 8.1 device, and this is an 11.0. Why are you just... Okay, whatever. In the box, for the Chinese model, you basically had everything here. You had your iPhone 5S diagram, you had your iPhone, and then you had some Apple stickers. You also got an Apple SIM tool with that device, which you can use to poke and prod your phone, and I just broke the SIM tool. Well, that's just unfortunate. But who cares? This isn't even a real iPhone packaging, as it's fake. I'm just gonna... Oh, God. Okay. We're gonna put this in here. I'm actually gonna get a real box for this phone. Funny story about this phone coming up later in the episode. So, you got a 1 meter lightning cable, which you get in all the boxes, 5 watt, we all know this, and some earpods with the headphone jack. Yes, I did say headphone jack when Apple had headphone jacks. It's good that they removed it, though. Just gonna close those boys up. The American model is the same, but you did not get a SIM card tool, as it was a way of Apple saving packaging. But in China, there was a law saying that you needed to get the SIM card tool for all devices. Now we're going to take you on a little brief tour of what pictures look like when you shot them with the 5 and 5S. And then we're going to look at some different apps and what they looked like during the iPhone 5S's heyday in between 2013 and 2015. why people call the iPhone 10 expensive, because it's really not considered. You're getting so much for your money. These are two 16GB phones, which ran you $649. The next year, we got the 6 and 6 Plus, interesting phones, and the 6S was a very interesting phone. The 6S is still supported with iOS 13 today, but the problem with the 6S is the fact that it's not very good, it's not very fast, and most people did have 16GB configuration model. This phone is 16GB, and as you can see with the apps here and the amount of photos that are in the phone, we are already using a good chunk of those gigabytes. Like, I'm talking with all the videos and photos here, we only have a gig left in this phone. Most people also have TikTok and other apps on here. Back in the day on this phone, which has 5 gigs of storage left, you could have all of these apps. You could get an iPhone 6S Plus Rose Gold 16GB for $749. And then 2 years later, you're only down to 10 gigs of storage space. This phone was an absolute disaster, and it made a lot of people mad at Apple that they were still selling this phone but not optimizing iOS for its storage space. It was one of the biggest faults of the iPhone 6S, and it's the reason why you don't see many iPhone 6Ss out there, is because most people bought the cheapest model and then had to upgrade a year or two later because they ran out of storage so many times. Oh, what's gonna thunderstorm? Yeah, video recording in the thunder. This is gonna be a lot of fun. Also really fun to edit too. I don't mind recording in the thunderstorm when it's like noisy outside with my family here. iOS and iOS 7 took 1 gig of storage. iOS and iOS 9 was 1.5. Then enter in iOS 10 and we now have 2 gigs of storage. This phone right here with iOS 11, because Apple switched HFS Plus to APFS, which is the Apple file system, for iOS 10.3.2. For to switch to this file type, the iPhone needed more storage access and storage capability. In iOS 12, this was fixed, but if you're going 2 years with your phone and you're hitting that storage bump almost on a daily basis, you're gonna upgrade it. And that was basically the demise of the iPhone 5 and 5S. The iPhone 5 was left on iOS 10.3.3, and the 5S is still running on iOS 12 today. I left my 5S on iOS 11 because of this storage issue and the switch between HFS Plus and APFS being so hard on my process. So another thing to consider about the iPhone 5 generation was app support. For the 32-bit models, the 5 and the 5C, the app support really wasn't there after iOS 12. Once iOS 13 came out, iOS 12 became the baseline because of how many iPads and iPhones support iOS 12. Similarly to the iOS 9 release we had, where all of those devices were stuck with iOS 9. So app support for those devices was very rich and very full until iOS 12. Now, the reason why I say this is because on Apple's website right now, you cannot get support for the iPhone 4S, 5, 5C. The iPhone 5 and 5S's durability was pretty great at the time. For some of the iPhone 5 models, there were a lot of issues with the slate back and also having dents and stuff. But that was all fixed with the space gray models, and the glass was stronger, as well as the home button was more solid, as the ones on the iPhone 5 tend to kind of move and get off-centered, and yeah, like you could kind of dig in there. It just wasn't a good thing for the iPhone 5 models. And then also the iPhone 5 models had a lot weaker aluminum, so that was a huge dent that I had to fix by sanding it down. And it was coming off of the iPhone 4s with the glass back. Everyone hated the glass. Everyone hated the glass back because of how fragile this back glass actually was. If you tap it and then tap my glass back, you can hear that mine's a lot stronger than the iPhone 4s. And even the front glass was very fragile. So many people broke their iPhone 4s, and also a lot of people broke their iPhone 5s. You didn't get stronger glass and stronger aluminum until the iPhone 8, really. The iPhone 6S and 7 were still very breakable phones. The iPhone 5S was a lot stronger, and then we kind of ran back into the same issues with the iPhone 6. Now, the iPhone 6 had a lot of issues concerning its quality and durability. The iPhone 5S did not have any durability or quality issues, and that's why I think it's one of the greatest phones of all time. With the iPhone 3GS, we had battery problems. With the iPhone 4, we had antenna gate. 4S was overheating. iPhone 5 was the slate color chipping. 5S, there was not one reported durability issue and not one recall with that entire phone throughout its lifespan. Same with the iPhone 7 and the iPhone 8, the iPhone X, and Apple quality control got a lot better. The iPhone 6 had bending, touch disease, logic board failure, home button separation, display separation. Not noticeable, but if you put it on the table, you will notice that it doesn't lay flat, and it's actually quite disturbing how that happens. You know, my brother's a teenager. He's very rough with his Apple devices, and he bent the phone quite literally. And I remember when I was little, I watched Unbox Therapy's episode of him bending the iPhone 6 Plus. That thing is so malleable compared to the 5S. And then the 6 came out and it solved a lot of those issues, except for the bending problem because the form factor was still very thin. The iPhone 6 till this day still has a lot of those issues, and because it's out of Apple's warranty, they're not covering it anymore. And sadly, a lot of people that bought the iPhone 6 did not get that true Apple experience that they would have gotten with the 5S. Journey with iOS 7 started on the iPhone 4, which I got in 2012. I got it on iOS 6 from a classmate who didn't need it anymore. His rich daddy got him the next phone model. And so he just gave me this one, and I used it as a little iPod device until 5th grade when I got a SIM card and I stuck it in here. And I had an iPhone 4 through all of iOS 7. I received all the updates. I was very alarmed when it came out because it was like, wow, everything's so cool. Everything's so different. It's so flat. It's so nice. I really enjoyed iOS 7, and for me, it was a huge boon to my little system because I was just like, wow, this is so cool. I can't believe my phone supported this because a lot of my friends had iPod 4th generations, couldn't get iOS 7, and I was like the cool kid who had the phone that could actually run the operating system. It was a big thing back then. A lot of people were using iPhones that did not have the latest operating system on them, and iOS 7, you had to be a part of that elite class. Unless you had an iPod 5th generation, which most people did not, you could not run iOS 7. Most people did have iPads, though, the iPad 2nd generation and 3rd generation that did run iOS 7, but we didn't get iPads as kids until a lot later. I didn't get my iPad until 2016. Most kids got iPods because the iPads were really, really expensive, and they were really easy to break, too. Cracking an iPad is the most easiest thing you can do, besides cracking an iPhone 4. I cracked my iPhone 4, my white one, both front and back. I upgraded to this phone right here. This is the iPhone 5S. It's a 16GB model, and it's a hybrid between a China phone and a United States phone. Little fun story about this. So this is the box that the phone came in right here with the weird distorted Apple logo that we talked about earlier in the video. And it was from China. My dad's boss got it for him in July of 2015 because my dad had this really old flip phone, and my boss was sick and tired of looking at it, so he just bought him this phone. He got it off of some black market somewhere for $300. It worked, it ran iOS, so he was like, oh, sweet, iPhone. This phone had a lot of weird parts in it. When I was done using it, I opened this phone up to kind of see what was going on inside of it because it was acting very weird from some of the other 5Ss that my friends had. There were a lot of problems with it being from China. We're going to get into those next. But I got my iPhone starting on iOS 8.4, so I didn't use it for a long time, but the iOS that I first used and I got really accustomed to using was iOS 9 after iOS 7. I used iOS 7 for 2 years. iOS 9 was really great because it brought a lot of really amazing functionality to the iPhone. Spotify got a lot of improvements in iOS 9, and it was really taking on Apple hard. YouTube, Instagram, the app got updated to really what it is now. Snapchat, we had Pokemon Go. I played Pokemon Go on my iPhone 5S. I killed the battery on the thing. Its screen on time was like an hour, and it was actually charged to 100% this morning. Didn't even use it, and now it's at 14%. So you can kind of gauge at how bad the batteries were after playing Pokemon Go. It was a really fun phone to use with that small display. I could basically take it anywhere. A lot of my friends had iPhone 5Ss, so we basically all kind of camped out in that same boat. A lot of us upgraded to the 8 and X later, and we're kind of all in the same general cycle for upgrading our phones, which is kind of cool. It was given to him, he opened it up, he saved it, he gave it to me, and then he got an Android phone. When I got this, it wasn't a real fast phone, and it wasn't a really good phone. I don't know if other iPhone 5S experiences went like that, but on iOS 9, the iPhone 5S had a lot of overheating issues. The iPhone 5S right here, once iOS 9.2 came out, and then all the way up to iOS 10.3.1, it ran like a champ. It was super fast, and then it went downhill from there. So what I did in the morning every day when I got up was I went to options and turned on set up personal hotspot, and I went and did my hotspot thing, because this was my hotspot for my iPad. My iPad, which is somewhere in the house, was my device from iOS 10.3.3 till iOS 11 when I got my iPhone 8, because I would use this phone as a hotspot for my iPad because my iPad had better battery and I could do all my iPad things on there with the hotspot, and I kind of liked having that big display around. Obviously it wasn't ideal when I couldn't have that big display around. What I would do is I would have this thing, and then every night I would get home and I would airdrop all the stuff I did that day to the ploy I was using to get through with this device until I could upgrade to the iPhone X. I had an Apple Watch connected to this thing. I had a Series 2 that I got. It was a lot of fun to use, but I didn't really use it for all that much until I got into high school. High school was really great with the Apple Watch because it kind of helps when you get text messages from your friends in class. It keeps you from not getting bored. Great phone. I used it up until iOS 11, and it was actually supposed to be on iOS 10. I wanted to update it so I could quickly go through my iPhone 8, because on iOS 11, there's this cool feature that was added where if you put a newer iPhone close to an older iPhone, it will automatically give you a pop-up that says, do you want to set up this iPhone? And I used that. It was great, so I could get all my data fast. And in the end, I don't think I was worth it. I would have rather had this on iOS 10, but it doesn't matter. Using it, a lot of my friends had this phone. And the new thing for the kids these days in middle school is they all have the 10R, and they all try to compete to see if they can each get a similar color of the 10R in their friend group. Like Johnny gets the red one, Sammy gets the blue one. It's this whole thing that I don't really quite understand, because in high school we just use our phones anyway. I never used an iPhone 5S on iOS 7, but I did get that beautiful iOS 7 experience. iOS 10 was really nice. One of my favorite features of iOS 10 on the iPhone 5S when it came out would swipe here to get a bunch of like weather and stock information. That was super helpful. Control Center, I loved all the fun colors you got with iOS 10. I was on all of the betas for iOS 10 actually because I loved it so much. iOS 11, I was not on any of the betas because I didn't know if I wanted to upgrade to it. Really never liked this Control Center. I thought it was too busy. The stupid thing about the Control Center was, and I'm so glad Apple fixed this, is in iOS 10 when you were playing music on Spotify, this never worked. So having this here was just so stupid because it wouldn't integrate with Spotify. They ended up fixing that so that this player up here integrates with whatever music you have going, whether it's Spotify or Apple Music, which is really nice for people that don't have Apple Music. Again, with this thing here, this only integrated with Apple Music, and a lot of people didn't have Apple Music, so it was just wasting space, so that's why they probably fixed it. Another thing that I liked about the iPhone 11, not the iPhone 11, the iOS 11 was the Control Center. The Control Center, this format was absolutely amazing. I love that you had battery life settings there. You could screen record stuff. That was so cool. You could finally screen record YouTube videos and send it to your friends. Notes, calculator, alarms. It was great. It was amazing. And iOS 11, I feel like, was a departure from the old ways. And iOS 10 was kind of like that stepping stone on getting there. Alrighty, so now we're going to go over all of the parts of my phone that aren't Apple. What the Chinese market would do is they would buy iPhone 5Ss and 5s, take out all of the parts, swap them with non-OEM versions, then return them to Apple, and then sell the Apple parts. And this poor little iPhone 5S was a victim of this. This display is not OEM. This home button is OEM, connected to an OEM logic board. The camera is OEM up here. Earpiece is not OEM. Speakers are not OEM. They sound very tinny and shrill compared to the iPhone 5. Lightning connector, headphone jack, volume rockers, ringer, power button on top, not OEM. The only part of this phone that's actually OEM is the back bracket for the AT&T model that was somehow brought in China, then lost in China, then the Chinese people got into the phone, they deconnected everything, then they reset the phone with their hacking technology, and then they resold it, but you could access the AT&T network or the Chinese network because Chinese people like to get across their VPNs that Winnie the Pooh sets up for them. So this was their way of doing it, was creating these kind of hybrid iPhone 5S models. I got one right here with its somewhat original, not really box that they just printed in some sweatshop somewhere. I have no idea. But $300, he couldn't complain. The phone turned on and worked like a real phone would. So now we're going to see what's changed between the different iOS systems in iOS 7, 8, and 9, because their subtle differences are noticeable. And then we're going to compare 10 to 11, the big ones. What I want to point out is animation times. It's really interesting because if I hold here, look at how fast that is compared to this. Like, it's a noticeable difference. I did not know that until now. And then I did some research. iOS 7 apparently was very laggy unintentionally. So the animations were very stuttered. Like, this one is just so direct with its animations. Like, it just, oh, I gotta slide down line. Like, it's like, boom, you're right in it. No hesitation. With this one, there's a little bit of hesitation, but that's just a little bug that I found. Little early version iOS 7 kind of thing. So now we are gonna be comparing the settings app of iOS 7, 8, and 9. So in iOS 7 and 8, there were a lot of like very blue and gray textured colors. There wasn't really much beauty in the operating system that we got with iOS 9. iOS 9, there were many colors that were brought to the system, and it was just an overall better looking system, and it was more fluid, and you got more identifiers for stuff like wallpaper, general, display settings, and brightness. In iOS 8, we got some of that too, and it was basically the same layout as iOS 9, but with some battery improvements, because in iOS 9 we did get low power mode, which was a battery improvement. I'm going to turn that brightness down so it doesn't interfere with the video. We did get some battery improvements, low power mode, and other really cool features that brought a lot of battery life and battery performance to the iPhone. And then we have iCloud, iTunes Store, Mail, Notes, Reminders, Phone, Messages, FaceTime, Maps, Compass, Safari. News was a more refined app. It wasn't really your classic newsstand anymore, so that got its own dedicated app where you had features. We had a new app for music, videos, photos, podcasts, and then we had integrated apps, and then we have our list of app settings down here, which you could play with and do whatever you like with. It was the same thing on iOS 7, with the exception that you had Nike plus iPod on iOS 7, a feature that then got removed on iOS 8. Now, on iOS 7, you notice that some of the settings are a lot less vibrant than on iOS 8 and 9, and that is very true. Video, music, and App Store were in the same place. App Store settings are now up by iCloud, which was a change because the App Store and the iCloud kind of act like the same thing, and they kept them all in that same area. Mail was up by iCloud over here. Mail then got transferred to Notes, so they just brought iCloud up here, music and iTunes up here in the App Store settings so that it would be more user accessible. Another thing is privacy, Touch ID, those all stayed the same. Sounds, wallpaper, display brightness. Where was that? Is that within wallpaper? Yeah, so display brightness was within wallpaper, and that was changed to be its own dedicated thing, so that you could have bold text and text features if you couldn't see your phone as well. And iOS 8 did bring a lot of those accessibility features to your iPhone. iOS 7 are the same thing. You got your Wi-Fi, you have your Bluetooth, you have your cellular. Going into all of those are exactly the same thing. Notifications, you got a list of centers here, and then in notifications here, you have your apps. I don't know why this was in here. This was basically a list of different things you could have for different apps, but then your settings for your apps was right here. So it didn't really make sense to have this drop-down bar with all of these features here, as you could do it right within the app. Going out, I know it's in Russian, you're not losing any of the experience. So Control Center, this was to access within the lock screen or within apps. It's the same here, which is a little bit more text for description. Do Not Disturb was a new feature in iOS 6 that was brought over and brought with more functionality to iOS 7 with different settings and times and schedules that you could do. These are all basically the same. The sounds did not get an update until iOS 10. The iCloud logo did get an update because there were a lot more refinements with that. as you can see, iCloud on iOS 7 and iOS 9 here, there were some different settings. The settings were the same in iOS 9. At the top here, you got an email and a little card that showed your contact information. Then you got storage, and then a bunch of other things like iCloud Drive and iCloud Photos and a lot of other options. iCloud Drive and iCloud Photos made it easier for you to transfer your photos between your Mac and your iPhone, and this was a feature that was only on the iPhone 5S. The iPhone 4S, you could not have photos on your iCloud being transferred through the devices for the sake of battery power. This was a feature that was added to the iPhone 5S, along with support for news, backups, and keychain, which was so you could save your apps. Options down here to share your location with other people if you needed to find someone's phone or you yourself were lost. Going out of there, you could swipe, and we are back in the normal settings. Now, if you go into Mail on iOS 7, you're going to get the same information here. You have all of your iCloud and your different mail accounts, your push notifications, preview, show, and then you have your different flag styles. Flagging was a new thing in iOS. And then what you could do, ask before deleting. Those were all of those settings that here. Organized threads. Nothing was changed in the Mail app for iOS 7, 8, and 9. And then here you had the same thing, but you had preview, lines, color. Oh, you could have shapes for flags. Interesting. So you could have like a square or something. That's kind of cool. I did not know that. And then you could mark the address, show an app switcher, increase quote level. Don't know what that does, but it must do something. And then you can sort the order, and then you could have contacts found in Mail be saved. And then this was more integration between your Mail app, calendars, and notes. With time zone override, that was so that when you added an event from your Mail to your calendar, it would override the time zone, giving you your time zones that you actually knew when the event was taking place. Week numbers, this is on the calendar, so if I go into the calendar here, you will see that we have different numbers of the week displayed here. Going back in, and they kind of grouped all these together because there wasn't many settings for each of them. So that was calendars, contacts, and then notes got its own thing, but the notes app was very basic. Reminders was very basic. Nothing changed there. Maps got some features in iOS 9. Loud volume was a feature, English, and then those things were all the same. Maps for iOS 9 was redefined totally on the inside, but I don't really have that to show you, so you can watch everything Apple Pro's video on that, link in the description below, for all of your iOS 9, iOS 10, and iOS 11 comparisons. I'm not going to do a comparison of the settings app between iOS 9, iOS 10, iOS 11, because the settings between iOS 9 and iOS 11 are very similar, and everything kind of stayed in the same layout, except in iOS 11, iCloud is at the top bar, and then you have all of your settings here, and it's very similar to iOS 9. Just gonna scoot that boy in there so you can see. iCloud was moved to the top. You had airplane mode settings, cellular, and more. You were able to view more on iOS 11. Battery, SOS, Touch ID, Siri suggestions. This was for all of the Siri integration. And then you had all of your App Store stuff, which is the same, accounts and passwords, which was your keychain functionality. Mail, contacts, and calendars kind of got their own thing so that they were more separate. And then you had other things here. You could change the camera mode with inside the camera app and settings. That was a first, but that was not available on the iPhone 5. That was a 5S and later feature on iOS 9. You had your books, your podcasts, music, TV, same videos here. It was all the same stuff. news, the app icon change, and it was basically the same layout. Just the sheer beauty of this operating system, and coming from iOS 6 to what we have now was just absolutely amazing. It was just very colorful and so redefining in so many ways, and iOS 9 built up on that, and later we got iOS 10. It was just a great operating system, and it was a lot of fun to use with all the different slide over menus and colors and things like that kind of got the iPhone out of this really old stage and into this very new era of color and vibrancy and just this feeling of very premium nostalgia. Many of the apps did not change in iOS 8 as iOS 8 was more of a bug fixing year. iOS 9 brought a lot of new features as it was the iPhone's big year to catch up with its Android competitors. And then iOS 10, iOS 11 was Apple differentiating itself from its older iOS systems and bringing more features to the iPhone 7 layout. So the iOS weather app underwent many changes. So in iOS 7, we started out with this cool, like, translucent, transparent layout, and the animations in the background stayed the same throughout iOS, and it's something that really makes iOS feel really modern and just staying with the times. Like, Android does not have the weather transparency where you have all the things going on in the background. That really makes iOS iOS. In iOS 8, they moved the click to get the rest of your information to a tab at the bottom, and that tab at the bottom was not very organized at all. They then refined this in iOS 10, had a bunch of changes in iOS 11. They made it more bubbly in iOS 11 but it was really for the bigger phone. iOS 10 was the last iOS that was designed for the smaller 4-inch iPhones because the text was very small. And then in iOS 11, the text got bigger and it was more to scroll on the iPhone 5S. On the iPhone 8, it was really nice to have that bigger picture that was designed for that 16:9 aspect ratio. When the iPhone X came out, however, it was really weird to see the weather app in the 16:9 because you had all that chunky space at the bottom that was not being used at all. So the calculator got a design change to meet that more bubbly aspect of iOS. The App Store in the beginning of iOS 6 days was the final version of the App Store, and we didn't see a change in that until iOS 11. It was very basic. You got a list of apps when you hit most popular, you got a bunch of other small things, and then you got categories, a search tab, and then a place to get updates. In iOS 11, this all changed. Nice Today view where we got to see all the new apps and what the most popular grossing apps are, and it kind of condensed all of that useless information into one nice scrollable page. And then we still got our categories, our search features. But then we had a special tab that was dedicated just for games. And this is what really took iOS to a gaming platform. Because when we got the 12.9-inch iPad Pro 3rd generation, it was this big change. You had this awesome display, 120 hertz. It was absolutely gorgeous. And with the A12X chip, the processing power was absolutely huge. Like, you could play AAA games on an iPad no problem without having any internal fans. Like, Apple does an amazing job with their processors. The iPhone from casual gaming platform to this AAA gaming platform. Hot Lava was a AAA title that was brought over to the iPad. What Apple did was they kind of ruined it and made Apple Arcade. Apple Arcade is like this thing that no one really uses. It's kind of stupid. Here's a better look at all the different categories and different features that you had in iOS 11 with the App Store change. And then the Messages app was looking kind of dry. iOS 9, it was boring. We needed something new. And that's where Apple came in with their new messaging app integration, where you could buy apps and you could use them to have different emojis and different cool fonts in the Messages app. This never really caught on because people just like the basic bare bones messages, but it was kind of cool that you could have integrated apps and that you could pay people through Messages when you send them certain links and certain tabs. Sharing music, sharing stuff like within the Target app. If you want to share some crackers or some recipes, you can do that very easily with app integration. And it was really kind of cool, and it is useful when you really need it. Another thing during this time period that came out for the iPhones, and I don't know how this happened, but Pages, Numbers, and Keynote. You need iOS 13 to run these. I got these downloaded and running on these phones, no problem. I actually got iMovie, which requires iOS 13.4 to run on these phones, and it was kind of cool because I did play around with that app on here, and it was Mac OS iMovie, but like shrunken down. It's not like the iMovie it is today in iOS, where it's very refined and very touch friendly. There was a lot of fun to use. The iPhone 4s and 4Ss were not allowed to run pages, numbers, and Keynote. Apple didn't allow it because if you held your phone in this view, it would distort the entire image, and texting in landscape was something that just didn't happen on these phones. Apple specifically made pages, numbers, and Keynote available on the iPhone as well as iMovie because of the iPhone 6 Plus's bigger display. They thought that if they added these apps, people would be able to use them because of the bigger screen real estate, and they did. As you can see in the picture, it is very easy to type in landscape mode on an iPhone 6 Plus, as it is like an iPad. On the iPhone 5, 5S, and 4 series, it was very cramped to do all this typing, and so that's why the iPhone 4S and 4 did not get these features. Some would even argue the iPhone 5S and 5 shouldn't even got these features because people really couldn't use them. The keyboard later in this video, as you will see, will take up a lot of space, and it was very uncomfortable. Until the iPhone 6 Plus and 6, the iPhone was primarily a portrait mode device. We only started getting landscape support until iOS 10, when there were more phones that could support landscape support for more apps. And the reason why that these apps were on here was for handoff with macOS. On macOS, we have pages, numbers, and Keynote, and this was so that all your files could be with your iCloud Drive. Craig was really hyping this idea of integration, and I use these integration features all the time with my Mac. Another thing with iOS 8 is that we got GarageBand, and we got some other really fun creative apps to kind of work on iOS because Apple was advertising the new iPad Pro, and they were like, look, you can record video, you can edit that video, you have GarageBand. It was to make people learn that iOS wasn't a joking operating system and that you could actually do some really cool stuff. So that was kind of what iOS 8 brought to the table, and the iPhone 5S was a part of that. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna go over the changes. There was a subtle change starting with the camera app. The camera app in iOS 7, you had your photos, your one-to-one, and your other Russian text, and then you got to see HDR and auto there. The fonts did change here, and then we have the more traditional iOS layout with iOS 9. You open Pages, and you are greeted with a welcome message. Like that. Continue. Started, create a new document. Free updates available. Wow, I don't think that's going to work. And then you just start typing. In the early versions of iOS, your keyboard looked very different than the keyboard in iOS 8. It had a very subtle, like, that's the shift, that's the unshift key, that's the shift key, where here it is more prominent, and that was to help with clarity. Later on in iOS, we have this feature. Oh, we get a splash screen. Ooh, why are you taking so long to load notes? Not now. We're going to make a new note. Where you have your lowercase letters and then your uppercase letters, and switches between the two. That was a feature. Yeah, so it wasn't iOS 9 was when this was changed to develop a more sense of clarity. You also, with iOS 7, had this feature. Hello. Hi, how you doing? And then it would do that. Yo, what's up? And it would do that too. That was a feature added in iOS 7, which was dictation. So now I welcome you to Numbers on iOS 8 and iOS 7. Yes, that's not going to work. Later. Get started. We're going to create a new document. So these are all the documents you have. Well, and these are all of the very basic ones. Yep, same exact thing. You go into here to start a new spreadsheet. And then you just start typing in numbers. And $sign. I made a lot of money this year. Oh, yes. Percentage that. Oh, that's blue and that's green. I like the blue, though. What does this check do? Oh, it makes a checkbox. It's kind of cool. You can start the thing. You can go to the next line. Enter, which means you go down. Yeah, basic numbers. You didn't get a number pad in this version of Numbers. That came in later with iOS 10. Cool nonetheless that you could do spreadsheets on your phone. Android had no comparison that would automatically go to your computer. And the Microsoft Word and Excel PowerPoint suite did come to the iPhone on iOS 7, but it was only for the iPad version of iOS, as Microsoft wanted users to have a bigger experience in order to use their app. More people bought the iPhone 6 and 6S. They ported their apps over to iOS. And that's what kind of happened. A lot of people thought that the smaller phones couldn't run their apps, so they had to be on the iPad. But the iPhone 6 Plus kind of showed people that, you know, let's just put it on the iPhone anyway. Who cares? We're going to get a welcome splash screen in portrait mode. Continue. Create a presentation. Use iCloud. Create a presentation. You have to use iCloud with this version, but it doesn't matter since it's not even connected. And it was the same stuff. Ooh, that one's the prettiest. Then you can just double tap to edit. Oh, wow. Yeah, you can see how you don't have much screen real estate there. What does that wrench do? Oh, that's cool. You could pinch. You could... Oh, that's... Oh, what's play? Buggy. These were all the presenter notes. And again, this is what I mean about like colorifying iOS. Is iOS and iOS 7, blues, whites, and then later into iOS 10, we started to get this colorification of the operating system. You had presentation, toolset, password settings. All of these were the same thing. I want to see what settings is. Is it the same? Yeah, it's the same. It's the same stuff. Check for spelling, check for other things, blah, blah, blah. You get to see your SIM, the time, and the battery life on iOS 7, but not on iOS 8. Interesting. They may have removed that on iOS 8 because of the iPhone 5s's battery life being so good and the fact that like you need all the space possible on this little phone. Now we're going to launch iMovie and take a look at that because this was this was the most fascinating part of having this iPhone 5S. So we're launching iMovie. It says, welcome to iMovie, continue. It's in portrait. And just like that. Through them all because these are too hilarious. So this is Neon. Pretty cool. Now this is the 1990s shit we were looking for. Oh yes. Aww. See if we have any more. This is so cool. I did not know that they came with sample stuff. I didn't even look at the sample stuff. Kids are in danger. It is coronavirus and they are not 6 feet apart. Whatever shall we do? Alright, that was pretty boring. Had to give it some climactic drama here. Yes, because those are the exact same kids in the last video. Ah, that was fun. You know, Apple was so awesome with all their things. Oh! We can just record. Allow. Ba-da-doo-da-da-da-doo. Ooh, the video camera's really different on this one. Look at it. It's got a cool time and everything. Okay. Oh, you can even shape it. Use video. Ooh, the video camera's really different on this one. Look at it. Cool time and everything. Okay. Yeah, this is very different than the iMovie we all know today on the iPhone. Wow, that's really cool. I'm really happy I got this on here. That is a hair, not a crack. Okay. I'm not that dumb. All right, well, what if we do a transition? Nope. God, I'm so confused. Start a new movie. We would like to just create a movie. Gonna be very interesting. Use video. Oh yes, so much fun. Oh, you can import photos from there. You can import audio from all your playlists. Oh, fade to black. So you didn't get tiles, you just got a universal thing. Oh, that's fine. What else do we got here? Oh, that's literally it. Fade in, fade out. So apparently when you add an image, you get this little record symbol here to do. This isn't... Hello. Hello. And I guess that's how you put recordings on images. Just gonna accept that. Hello. Hello. Nice. Wow, wasn't that just super duper dandy? Yeah, that's iMovie. That's pretty much it. You can import stuff here if you have any photos or audio. But other than that, that's all you pretty much get with the older versions of iMovie. Man, we are so blessed with all the stuff we get from iMovie now. This was on the mobile version. I'm thinking this was the same version as it was on the iPad, but I'm not sure. I think the iPad version was a little bit better. It just says My Movie, 14 seconds long. I don't know what CNN iReport is, but I think that's kind of like some kind of sharing feature that never happened. iTunes, you can save the video, you can airdrop it. Basic things. We're just gonna cancel and we're probably gonna scrap this. So next on iOS 7, we're gonna be looking at notes. So we're gonna press here to make a new note. And then we're gonna type here. This is on iOS 7. On iOS 8, the note-taking experience is a little different. You go to notes, that's stocks. You press new up here, just like in iOS 7. Then you type your note. Trash can was flipped in iOS 8 with the share sheet to prevent people from accidentally deleting their notes. When you press the share sheet, you have these options, and obviously AirDrop on this version. You have AirDrop and just messages and mail, but here you have Facebook and Twitter integration, which was a new thing in iOS 8. About to enter the Maps app and the differences between iOS 7 and iOS 8. I do not have iOS 9 to do a comparison. But this should suffice. So the weird thing about iOS 7 is that we're getting stuff nearby here, where on iOS 8 we're getting stuff in general, and I think that was changed. Oh no, this 5S isn't using my location data. Okay, so we're gonna go to Texas. Here you go. You have your start function here at the bottom, and then you have start function here at top. This navigation bar goes into where you are currently living, which I can't show you. So we're gonna zoom out that. We also have a 3D view here, playing in depth of where you're going on the map. Touch to return to navigation. I'm thinking that's the same on iOS 7. No, it is not. Interesting. So in iOS 8, you get the touch to return to navigation, and iOS 7, you don't. I think that might be a bug. Probably is. Yes, so here we go. So here's our 3D walking view on iOS 8. And then here's iOS 7 with that same 3D view. The 3D view didn't really help that much, and then the turn-by-turn was still the same. You still got to scroll between your turn-by-turn directions, the overviews, the steps, Time to do some multitasking. So you're going to double click your home button and you're going to get multitasking. The only difference between multitasking is the fact that you have no recent contacts up at the top here. I don't know why Apple did the no recent contacts feature, because they did change that. And then also the way that the apps bounce on the bottom is a little bit different on iOS 8 than it is on 7. It's a little bit more refined because this is an early version of iOS 7. But that was multitasking. Multitask 9. We get some apps open here. It's quite similar. And then this is where it really changes and we get the view that we usually have right now. I prefer this multitasking view a lot better because it's much easier to see your apps than if you just double tap and go right to multitasking here, because you can't really see everything. And I definitely don't like multitasking on iOS 6. Multitasking on iOS 6 was just bad. It never gets old. Alrighty, so then on the iPhone 5, you will notice that this takes up the entire portion of the display, not allowing you to see notifications when you get them. That was refined on the iPhone 5S, as well as some other things with notification and notification management. So when you went into your phone and you swipe down here, you can see that you just got a notifications panel and you could search for stuff within Siri suggestions and that notifications panel and search for apps on your screen. With the iPhone 5S, that wasn't the case. When you scroll down for notifications, you got this, but then when you scrolled all the way down, you got to see your time, and a music player would pop up here. Another thing in the 5S was you had this to then play music, where in this, you did not have anything to play music, but this little splash screen here. This little splash screen in iOS 10 was not compatible with Spotify like this music player up here was. Apple was adamant about their Apple Music and wanting people to use Apple Music and needing Apple Music to fully use their iPhone. I really rarely ever used this. When you opened up on the lock screen, you had Spotify. This is what you get. You didn't get to control your music unless you were within the Spotify app. This was changed in iOS 11 as Spotify had integration. You could control stuff here on Spotify. And then there was a little pop-up here for your music, but under that you could see your notifications. Where if we're on the iPhone 5S and we play some, this is what pops up here, so then you can't see your notifications. And people didn't like that. They want to be able to see what was going on their phone. But for all the iPod people, this was very reminiscent of what you had with the iPod. iOS 11 was a huge leap for iPhone and a huge leap for the iPhone 5S, and iOS 10 feels very dated and more like iOS 9 than anything else. Here is the iOS 9 Hey Siri startup command. So to set up Hey Siri in iOS 9, what you do is you click this, you hit Set Up Now, and then you go through the steps. Hey Siri. Hey Siri. Hey Siri. Hey Siri, how is the weather today? Hey Siri, it's me. And this is a feature that was added in iOS 9 because the iPhone 6s with its A9 chip was able to stay on and also receive Hey Siri functionality without running into battery life issues. Hey Siri on these older iPhones, the 6, 5S, and 5 only work when you're plugged into power. And that was because it took a lot of processing to have that microphone on all the time. The 6S was better at managing power, so it was a feature really for the 6S and later iPhones. Siri on iOS 7. This is what ends up happening. So you get a splash screen and then you go through all the stuff with iOS 9 did. It's just some of the textures and fonts are different, but it was the same questions. The questions did not change until iOS 10. Now, some of the cool things about Siri in iOS 7 was that there's this option called hold your phone in the air to speak. Hold your phone up to your ear and say, hey Siri. Hey Siri. And it would try to work itself out. Sometimes it wouldn't, sometimes it would, and that's why this feature was removed, because it was very The iPhone 5S had a huge legacy of support, and software changed rapidly throughout its time as an iOS device, going from iOS 7 all the way up to iOS 12 with so many new features and so many cool things. And just being a part of that whole time frame. There are some stuff that I couldn't show you because of the fact that these phones are connected to Wi-Fi because they're iCloud locked, and you have to treat iCloud locked phones a certain way so that you don't disrupt the other users' data when you're playing games and stuff when you buy phones online. But other than that, it was a very fun time to be alive. One of the biggest features that I use every day is the app switcher. The app switcher going from iOS 7 to iOS 11 was absolutely huge. Another huge feature we got was App Store was a really nice inviting change with iOS 11, and when I upgraded to the iPhone 8, all of those 3D touch capabilities that the iPhone 6 got for 2 years, and then the 7, and then the 8 and X, much improved for iOS. From pop-ups that you could do, press and hold during that time. iOS 12 was kind of like the last iOS that was built around 3D touch with the 10 and 10s Max, and so the iPhone 5S kind of lost a lot of features, and since it was stuck on an iOS that was 3D touch built for, there are some features that feel a little bit slow on that device, and especially on the iPhone 5, where a lot of the features that were in iOS 10 for the iPhone 6s and 7, when you're going to watch Everything Apple Pro's video, you're going to see is there were a lot of cool things that were going on there. This is where the iPhone 5 legacy kind of left off, as it was a very great phone on its latest version of iOS 10.3.3. The iPhone 5S, most people left it off on iOS 11 or iOS 10 as they upgraded to the 7, 8, 8 Plus, and 10. The 10 was a very interesting option, and I was going to upgrade to the 10 from this phone, but it crapped out before I could get there, so I had to get the 8. But the 8's fine, and it's a really amazing phone today. This iPhone 5S was really great, and it was one of my favorite phones to use ever. The iPhone 5 was also an amazing phone, one of the first iPhones to run its latest version of iOS very well with ease, and it was just an amazing phone. You had stocks, you had weather, and it's very basic. It's very lightweight, very comfortable to hold the hand. This color was absolutely amazing, even though it did have some durability issues. It took great photos. It had 1080 at 30. Later on, the 5S got 1080 at 60. It was honestly amazing. And the iPhone 5 and 5S, their heyday lasted from 2013 to mid-2018. Is kind of after that I didn't see them much anymore. And it was a reminiscent of what was. The world that we lived in when these phones came out is drastically different from what we had now. Like, we had Vine, which is kind of similar to TikTok. We had Snapchat, Snapchat, Instagram, but now we have things for gamers like Discord, we have House Party, we have a lot of FaceTime applications. And group FaceTime was not a feature until iOS 12, so all of the iPhone 5S's lifespan was spent in only one person on the phone calling back and forth. On our phone like Fortnite and Pokemon Go, which came out in iOS 9. iOS 9 was a very great version of iOS for the iPhone 5 as its 64-bit processor was finally tamed, told everyone how much Apple cared for optimizing its operating systems and how well they could do it. It's basically a testament of what once was. iOS 7 was an amazing version of iOS, and a lot of things changed and a lot of things happened. iOS 7, iOS 9, iOS 10, iOS 11, everything was different. There was so much new being added to iOS, and today there are very little that needs to be added to iOS. iCloud integration and integration between the iPhone and the Mac. The iPhone and the Mac were very separate until iOS 7 really came in and Craig was like, yo, we are going to make the best ecosystem ever where your iPhone, your iPad, and your Mac can communicate. And the iPhone 5S was the star forefront of all of those innovations. And with these models, including handoff, CarPlay, the ability to have a cellular hotspot, airdropping files between each other's iPhones for pictures, mail, notes, messages, you name it, you can airdrop it. You can airdrop it to your Mac. NFC, the App Store was redesigned. You now could have FaceTime calls over cellular. And the biggest of them all, starting with iOS 8, Apple Watch connectivity occurred with the iPhone 5 and iPhone 5S as it marked a new era for Apple, a new era where you can have a little mini iPhone on your wrist to help you navigate your day. Then the Apple Watch was a great invention, and it was paired with the iPhone 5S, and its Touch ID persevered. It came in, and it's now running the latest version of iOS 12 like a champ. It's running it very, very well, and the iPhone 5S I think is going to be a great phone for the next 2 years until app support finally dies out. It's going to leave on a very great operating system, well optimized, unlike the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, and hopefully the 6S will get that same kind of optimization. But until then, this phone was absolutely amazing. It was so much fun to do this video on, even though there were some hiccups. Thanks so much for watching.